Hello?
It was a Saturday afternoon when I pulled up to Liam's house. We were supposed to hang out, just grab some food, play some video games, nothing out of the ordinary. I sent him a quick text. Here. No response. I figured he was probably in the shower or something, so I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there she was, his mom, wearing nothing but a white towel, loosely wrapped around her body. Her hair was wet, drops of water still clinging to her shoulders. I froze. My mouth probably fell open a little. She looked just as surprised as I was, but only for a second. Then she laughed softly, that kind of amused chuckle someone gives when they catch you off guard. "Oh, hey," she said, tightening the towel around her. "You must be here for Liam?" Yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to." I started stammering like a complete idiot. She waved it off casually. "It's fine. He's just getting out of the shower. You can come in if you want." "Come in?" I hesitated. I mean, what else could I do? Stand outside and wait like a weirdo? I gave a small nod and stepped inside, trying very hard not to look anywhere near the towel or how it clung to her curves. I focused on the floor, on the rug, on my shoes. She closed the door behind me, and I heard the soft padding of her feet as she walked across the wooden floor. I couldn't help but glance up as she moved. Bare shoulders, smooth skin, the towel stopping just above her knees. "I was in the middle of a shower when the bell rang," she said, picking up a glass of water from the kitchen counter. "Didn't expect anyone." "Yeah, sorry," I repeated, standing awkwardly in the hallway. "You don't have to keep apologizing," she smiled. "Want something to drink? Water, soda?" I shook my head quickly. "No, I'm good. I'll just wait for Liam." "He might be a while," she said, sipping her water. "Teenage boys and long showers, you know how it is." I chuckled nervously, unsure of what to say. The whole situation felt strange. Not wrong exactly, but like I had stepped into a scene I wasn't supposed to be part of. Her casual tone didn't help. It made it feel like this wasn't weird for her at all. She walked past me, leaving a faint trail of shampoo scent in the air. She disappeared into the hallway, probably heading to her room to get dressed. I let out a long breath the second she was out of sight. What just happened? I sat down on the edge of the couch, trying to steady my thoughts. This wasn't a big deal. Just a coincidence. A moment. But still, there was something about the way she'd looked at me. That smile. The way she hadn't rushed to hide. Like she didn't mind. A few minutes passed. I checked my phone again. Still nothing from Liam. Then I heard her voice from the hallway. "You can turn the TV on if you want." I found the remote on the table and turned it on, letting the background noise fill the silence. I didn't even care what was playing. My mind kept going back to those first few seconds. Her wet hair, her bare legs, the softness in her voice. This wasn't how today was supposed to go. Eventually, I heard the sound of a door creaking open, then soft footsteps returning to the living room. She was dressed now, sort of. A light blue tank top and pajama pants. Her hair still damp, loosely tied back. She looked more relaxed, barefoot, holding a bowl of fruit. "I hope you don't mind waiting," she said, sitting down on the other end of the couch. "He tends to lose track of time in there." "No problem," I said, trying to sound casual. She placed the bowl between us and leaned back against the cushions. "So, how's school going?" I shrugged. "Same as always. Kinda boring." She smiled again, that same soft, knowing smile. "Yeah, it usually is." I tried to focus on the TV, but her presence was impossible to ignore. The scent of shampoo lingered, and every time she shifted, the couch creaked just enough to remind me we were sitting on the same piece of furniture. And Liam was still nowhere to be seen. That's when I started to wonder, was this just a coincidence? Or something more? The minutes ticked by slower than ever, and still no sign of Liam. I glanced at my phone again. No texts, no calls. The sound of the shower had long stopped, but the house remained quiet, except for the soft hum of the television and the occasional rustle from the bowl of fruit between us. His mom popped a grape into her mouth and smiled, almost like she was trying not to laugh. "You're really uncomfortable, aren't you?" I felt my face go red. "No, I mean not really. Just wasn't expecting a half-naked woman to answer the door," she said with a smirk. I froze. She looked at me, holding eye contact for just a little too long before laughing softly and shaking her head. "Relax, I'm just teasing. You're too easy." I managed a nervous chuckle and looked away. My heart was thudding a little harder than it should have been. It felt like a trap or a game, or something I wasn't sure I was supposed to be part of. "I used to tease Liam's friends all the time when they were little," she added. "But I guess you're not really kids anymore, huh?" Her words hung in the air, a little heavier than they needed to be. I didn't know how to respond to that. I could feel her watching me, waiting for a reaction. I stayed quiet. "I remember when you boys used to run around this neighborhood with skinned knees and ice cream on your faces," she continued. "Now look at you, driving, shaving, coming to the door like grown men." I glanced at her and she smiled. Not the amused smile she gave before, but a softer one. A little nostalgic. A little sad? I found myself asking, "You okay?" She blinked, like I caught her off guard. Then she looked down and exhaled slowly. "Yeah, just time moves too fast, you know?" I nodded even though I didn't really know. Not the way she did. She picked up another grape. "Liam's dad left when he was 10. Since then, it's just been me and him. Sometimes it feels like I blinked, and now he barely talks to me. Always out, always on his phone. I'm not complaining. It's just lonely sometimes." Something about the way she said it, it wasn't fishing for pity. It was honest, vulnerable, and I wasn't used to hearing adults, especially someone like her, talk like that. "I guess I'm just not used to having someone to talk to," she added, brushing a strand of damp hair behind her ear. "You don't realize how quiet a house can be until the noise stops." I didn't know what came over me, but I said, "You're not alone right now." She looked at me, eyes locking onto mine again. A long pause. Then she smiled again, but this one was different. Not teasing, not soft, just knowing. "You've grown up, haven't you?" she asked quietly. I swallowed, not trusting my voice to say anything. The room suddenly felt warmer. She reached for the remote and muted the TV. The silence that followed felt electric, like something had shifted. I was hyper-aware of everything. How close we were on the couch, how the scent of her hair reached me, how her voice dropped a little lower. "You know," she said, "sometimes I look at you boys and wonder what kind of men you'll become." I finally spoke. "And," she smiled, "some already are." I didn't know what to do with that. My heart was pounding now. It didn't feel like a casual conversation anymore. She stood up, slowly, and walked toward the hallway. "I'm going to check on Liam. You can come with me if you want, or just wait here." Her voice was calm, almost like a challenge, or maybe an invitation. She turned the corner and disappeared down the hallway, and I sat there, still as stone. What was I supposed to do? Every part of me was screaming to follow, to find out what she meant, what she wanted. But another part of me didn't move. Because this wasn't just anyone. This was Liam's mom. Still, my legs moved before my brain caught up. I stood up, and I followed. The hallway was dimly lit, the only glow coming from the night light near the floorboards. Each step I took felt heavier than the last. My breath was shallow, and my palms were sweating, even though the house was cool. She stood at the end of the hallway, her back to me, speaking softly through Liam's bedroom door. I couldn't hear what she said. Maybe something like, "Your friend's here." But there was no answer. She glanced back at me, then turned the knob slowly and peeked in. "Fast asleep," she whispered as she closed the door gently, as if that settled it. I guess he must have been more tired than he thought. I stared at the door, frozen again. "He used to crash like this all the time," she said as she passed me, heading back toward the living room. Back in middle school, he'd play Xbox till midnight and then fall asleep right on the floor. I followed her again without thinking, but this time the space between us was smaller. She didn't go back to the couch. Instead, she leaned against the wall near the dining room, arms crossed. Her hair had dried a bit now, a few loose strands falling around her face. That soft scent I noticed earlier still hung in the air. Something floral, but warm. "You're quiet," she said, tilting her head slightly. "I'm just trying to be respectful," I said. "This whole thing's kinda weird." "Weird?" She raised an eyebrow. "How?" I shrugged. "I'm here for your son, and now I'm talking to you, alone, at night." "You're not doing anything wrong," she said simply. "Unless you think talking to me is wrong." "I don't," I said quickly. "It's just unexpected." She smiled. "You think too much." She stepped toward me, not dramatically, just casually. But the space shrank. I could feel her presence in a way that didn't feel parental. Felt human, womanly. She reached past me toward the small lamp on the corner table and clicked it off. The room dimmed further, lit only by the hallway light. She turned back to face me. "Better." My throat felt dry. "Why?" "Sometimes softer light makes it easier to say things we wouldn't say otherwise," she said. "Like what?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the dining table and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. Her posture was relaxed, but there was a tension under it, like a held breath. "Do you ever think about who someone was before they became someone's mom?" she asked. "Or teacher? Or neighbor?" I hesitated. "I guess not really." She nodded. "Most people don't. But we're still that person. The one before." I sat across from her without realizing I had moved. The table between us suddenly felt thinner, the space more intimate. "I used to dance," she said. "In college. Ballet, modern, even some ballroom. I had offers. But then I met Liam's father. And, well, life took a turn." "Do you miss it?" I asked. "Not always. But sometimes, when it's quiet like this, yeah." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. And that silence between us grew into something else. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was loaded, heavy with things unspoken. She leaned forward, just slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the way you looked at me when I opened that door. My heart jumped. You were trying so hard not to stare," she said with a soft smile. "But I'm not blind." I wanted to deny it. I knew I should, but I couldn't. "I didn't mean," I started. "It's okay," she said gently. You don't have to explain. I'm not offended. A long silence. You've grown into a very handsome young man, she added. I felt my face flush, the heat rising to my ears. She didn't look away. She just waited, letting the air between us thicken. Finally, she stood up and looked down at me. Come with me, she said softly. I hesitated. You're not in trouble, she added, her smile returning. Just follow me. My legs moved again before I could process it. I followed her past the couch, past the darkened hallway, until we reached a room I hadn't seen yet. She opened the door. It was a guest bedroom. She stepped in first, then turned and looked at me. You can wait here for Liam if you want, she said, but I'll be back in a minute. And then she was gone. I stood in the middle of the room, every nerve in my body buzzing. Was this just hospitality? Or was something else happening? And more importantly, did I want it to? I stood there in the guest room, staring at the closed door. My thoughts were running in a dozen directions, none of them clear. The silence around me wasn't peaceful. It was charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. The room was softly lit by a small table lamp in the corner. There was a neatly made bed, a dresser, and an armchair pushed under the window. It was cozy, safe, but I didn't feel safe. Not from her, not from myself. I heard faint steps approaching. The door creaked open slowly. She was back, now dressed in a soft navy robe that tied loosely at the waist, her hair fully dry and tousled in that natural, effortlessly beautiful way. She wasn't trying too hard. She didn't have to. I figured you might be cold, she said, holding out a folded blanket. I reached for it with a quiet thanks, but she didn't hand it to me immediately. Instead, she stepped closer and gently placed it on the bed herself, brushing past me. I never meant to make you uncomfortable, she said softly, her back still to me. You didn't, I replied, and it was the truth. She turned to face me again. Her expression was unreadable, part guarded, part curious, part something else entirely. You're a good kid, she said, mature, thoughtful. I see why Liam likes having you around. I smiled faintly. We've been friends a long time. She nodded slowly, then sat on the edge of the bed. You know, sometimes, when the house is quiet and the world stops demanding so much from me, I wonder what I've missed. She looked up at me then, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. I don't get looked at like that anymore, she said. Like I'm seen. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to fix the moment, to ground it in something normal, but there was no going back. We'd crossed a threshold, even if no one had touched anyone. Even if nothing had technically happened. She reached out, lightly touched my hand, just enough to make me freeze. I shouldn't be saying this, she said, but it's been a long time since anyone made me feel like a woman. I stepped back, my heart thudding. I should go, I said, voice low. She didn't argue. She just nodded slowly and looked down at her lap. I took a few steps toward the hallway before pausing. Liam's still asleep, I said. I know, she whispered. Another beat of silence. Then I added, he doesn't need to know I was here this long. Her eyes flicked up to mine. She smiled, but it was bittersweet. No, he doesn't. I turned and walked down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the couch where I'd sat not even an hour ago, and toward the front door. As I reached for the knob, she said behind me, "You're not a kid anymore. You proved that tonight." I didn't turn around. I opened the door, stepped into the cool night air, and closed it gently behind me. The The street was quiet. My car waited where I left it. The world felt the same, but I wasn't. I knew I wouldn't be able to forget what happened, even if it wasn't physical. Even if it was only words, tension, silence, and glances. It was a moment I'd carry with me, not proudly, not with regret, but with weight. And from that night on, I never saw her the same way again, nor myself.
Bye bye.